First, God does not exist. But don't worry, what does exist is good, as opposed to evil. So if you believe in God, you believe in good, and that's as it should be. You are just fine. If you believe in evil, then you probably need a whack on the back of the neck with a big fucking stick.
Experience taught Stone Age people the difference between what poisoned them and what satisfied their hunger. Their minds gathered empirical realities necessary for survival. They did the best they could in drawing conclusions about the world beyond them. They assumed that they were at the center of the universe, which they saw as flat, small, and under the sky. They called themselves the people, and thought that strangers were creatures of another sort, less human than they. They believed that if they ate the flesh of a strong beast, they might acquire its spirit. Or, if they ate a portion of the body of a leader who had died, they might acquire his special qualities. They assumed that the sun and moon they saw moving across the sky were animate beings. A face of a dead person they knew and recognized in the peculiar shapes on the face of a rock was associated with the living spirit of that person dwelling within that rock. With no defined difference between spirit and materiality, they believed that in preserving a corpse, they were also helping to preserve the spirit of one who had died. They believed that a body went limp at death because the spirit that had been within it had left it for the invisible world of the spirits. They felt no urge to meld these ideas of spirits and materiality into a consistent picture. People correctly associated their own movement with their will, and they believed that all movement was the product of will. They saw insects as moving by will. They assumed that plants grew because of a will within. They saw the sun, moon, and stars as closer than they really were, and as moving by will. For Stone Age people, will was spirit, and they saw the world as filled with many spirits, or, to use another word, gods. They saw gods within everything that moved. There was a god within the wind, and another god within the rivers. A god in the ocean made the waters rush to the beach and then retreat. The sun was a god. They saw their reflection in water and believed that what they were seeing was their spirit. People attributed much that happened to the spirits and to magic. Lightning, thunder, rain, the tides, procreation, and fire were all magic. And fire was not only a product of magic, it was a manifestation of spirit. Their view of the world came to them with invented stories. These were stories that were told and accepted without recognition of a difference between fact and fantasy. Every society had its stories about creation, each with a different twist. Storytelling described their world in a way that they could understand. There were stories of a god having created them out of earth, and a story among others that they had been created from the bark of a tree. An occasional exception to universal order might be described as the work of a demon spirit, an evil of sorts. There were stories about evil and dread, a story with a threatening demon of some sort producing more excitement than one without danger. People believed that if the gods could perform magic, so too could they. The earliest form of religious ritual was an attempt at magic through imitation, such as painting a face on the belly of a pregnant woman in hope that the magic of the drawing would encourage birth. Hunter-gatherers were trying to get by rather than to change their world. They tended to believe the world would always be as the gods had made it. They had no sense of social progress or image of humanity's capabilities beyond their abilities. The imagination of those who had a biological potential for genius and those of normal intelligence were limited by their culture. Had it been otherwise, modern society would have appeared much sooner.
What is evil? Generally, it is seen as something like a morally reprehensible act that causes harm and discomfort to others. The old Aramaic meaning of evil is unripe. Someone who commits an evil act is somebody who has simply forgotten who he or she is in truth. And we can also see evil as an evolutionary catalyst. For instance, when a person or a whole society has gone through a horrific war, they often evolve to a more peaceful and peace-loving and compassionate consciousness. But what about the evildoers? What encourages them to commit these acts of evil? To explore this question, I would like to share with you the mystical explanation that we find in many traditions. Now, for some of you, this may be a bit too far out, but as I have said over and over again, I'm not here to convince anybody. I'm merely sharing different and new insights. We have to go back to the beginning of creation. And here we have the pure spiritual heavens, or we can also call them the love, and the realm of the absolute, where evil is not possible. The mystics tell us that at one point, some spiritual beings, or we can all call them angels, had the thought and the desire to be like God, and their goal was to undo creation and create their own new universe where they would be God. These thoughts and desires were contrary to love. They were of lower and different frequency, which catapulted these beings away from the frequency of love and pure heaven. In the Judeo-Christian teachings, this event is called the fall, and the leader of these beings was called Lucifer, the light bringer. Over eons of times, these beings lost most of their life energy and fell deeper and deeper and further away from the pure heavens. Many of them fell into physicality, the realm of contrast and duality, which is the realm of light and shadow and good and evil, of which planet Earth is one of these worlds. Some of these fallen entities have not given up their original desire to undo God's creation and have become very powerful beings and very destructive beings. And in many cultures they are called demons, evil spirits, grays, and so on. And most of them have resisted to be incarnated into an actual physical body here on earth. Now, the reason why they don't want to incarnate as human beings is because they would enter the wheel of reincarnation. That would mean that they would be reaping and harvesting all the horrors and negative seeds that they have sown. And here is the fascinating fact. Through the fall, these demonic beings have lost most of their own life energy potential, but they need a certain amount of energy to maintain their spiritual status and avoid incarnating into a human body. So they have to get it from somewhere. And from whom do they get it? Right, from us human beings. It is this intense negative energy, also called low energy or louche energy of mankind, that these entities feed on. This intense energy is created through our negative actions like fears, wars, hatred, fights, stress, and so on. And to get this energy from us, these demonic forces feed us with thoughts and beliefs of fear, hostility, confrontation, negativity, war, conflict, and so on. And on some level, we all have these thoughts, but their intensity gets inflamed and energized by these demonic forces, so that we eventually act upon them, and by doing so, we are generating that negative louche energy, which is food for the demonic entities. There's a wonderful description by Emanuel Swedenborg in his book on demons. He explains how these entities firstly fog our clarity and memory and make us susceptible to negative thoughts and beliefs. And then these thoughts and beliefs are injected into our consciousness by those beings. Now can we see why we always had wars and destructions in this world? So these are artificially induced conditions to supply these energy foods for the demonic forces. Any fight-to-death struggle releases this energy in great abundance. The most efficient way for these demonic forces is to start with the leaders of a group, of a nation, or a religion. These leaders then begin to promote injected beliefs of specialness and separation, and when more and more of their followers join their leaders' thinking and belief, it is only a matter of time when physical war against others will erupt. If you want to know more about it, I suggest you see my video, Why Do We Kill? Now we can look at a map of the Middle East with a much deeper understanding. According to the mystics, all these flashpoints and wars are nothing but a feeding ground for these negative entities. Now we also understand why evildoers feel so righteous in their actions. Take, for instance, a suicide bomber who kills himself and many others. Most of us might call that act as evil. But from the perspective and the twisted mind of the suicide bomber, his or her act is morally justified and even divine. We have the same contradiction with people like Hitler, Stalin, or Mao, who have tortured and killed millions because they strongly believed that they were doing the right thing in their own mind. Or think of all the horrors like beheadings, rape, and torture that are done by many followers of ISIS and similar religious-inspired movements in the Middle East. They all believe that their actions are pleasing their God. Well, the Christian church is no different. They had the Inquisition, where countless people were tortured and killed in the name of God. But not only political or religious leaders can be manipulated. Mystics believe that anybody who harbors negative thoughts or beliefs can easily fall prey to these demonic forces. Any argument or struggle between two people generates this louche energy, which is just a perfect food for these invisible bystanders. Now, from the spiritual perspective, one can actually see how these energies are spark off like lightning bolts from people who are fighting with each other. It is so strong that our spiritual guides are unable to come close to us and help us and guide us further. But the demonic beings just love this energy. They gobble it up and do anything to continue that fight. Therefore, it is so important for us to immediately question any fearful and stressful thoughts before they can infest our mind, our words, and our actions. Remember Byron Katie's famous words, "There are no terrible people. There are believers. If I believed what they believed, I would have to do that too." Now we understand that evil has one further quality. It offers us the opportunity to forgive the evildoer. Without evil, how can we learn to totally forgive? Now this was a short and general overview. There are many books available for deeper studies, and I personally enjoyed reading Astral Horrors by Gabriele von Würzburg. Doctrine and how it influences our world today. To understand where it came from, we have to go back to the 11th century. All of Europe was in the firm grip of the Catholic Church. At that time, the Church was sending thousands of men as crusaders to recapture the Holy Land, and in particular Jerusalem, which had fallen into Muslim hands. Now, who were these men, these crusaders? They came from all walks of life. The one thing they had in common was their belief in the Catholic teachings. However, when these men traveled to the Middle East, they were suddenly exposed to many different beliefs and spiritual teachings that they had never heard before. These teachings came from Judaic and Islam mysticism. They came from Egypt, from Greece, and even from faraway places like India. For some of these men, they were a truly mind-blowing experience. They also began to hear different interpretations of familiar